Okay, welcome to your Unit 3 extra review. So in this video, we're going to look at all these extra review problems which are very important for your test. So in number 1, the graph of the function f is shown at the right. Find each of the following. F of negative 2. Well, remember it's usually f of x, so the negative 2 is in place of x. So I'm going to go to an x value of negative 2. So that means I need to go back 2 spaces. That's an x value of 2. Anywhere up and down on this line is an x value of negative 2. But to get to the function, I need to move to this point right here. So once I figure out what point it is, then I can go ahead and figure out, well, what is the y value that's paired with an x value of negative 2 for this function? And that would be a negative 3. So we write that as f of negative 2 equals negative 3. The next one says find x if f of x is 0. So that means that my y value is 0. So that means I'm not moving up or down at all. So if I look at my graph and I'm moving at y value of 0, I can only move left or right. So I'm going to go left. The furthest left I can go is this point right here, which would be back 1, 2, 3 spaces. So the first value is negative 3, but that's not the only one for this function. So when we have a y value of 0, that means not moving up or down at all, I can move to this point right here, but I can also move to anywhere along this axis right here. Anywhere, that's where y value is 0. So I've just marked all those places on the graph. So all these red dots have a y value of 0 on this function, which I highlighted in green. So what are the x values? They are negative 3, 1, 5, and 7. So in order to write that, we have to, because there's more than one, put it in set notation. And then we just go ahead and write them all out. So negative 3, 1, 5, and 7. Okay, so the domain. Domain means x values. So we look at left to right on the graph. Where is the furthest left? Well, if I look furthest left, the function shows me that this is going on forever. So negative infinity, because it's going towards the left, so towards the negatives. And then on the right side, I see another arrow, so that means it's going to positive infinity. So the domain is negative infinity, comma, infinity. Well, then for the range, that means y values, so I need to look up and down. Well, the furthest down this graph ever goes is this value right here, which would be a negative 4. But we always have to think about, is there actually a point there? Well, I don't see an open circle at all, so this is the lowest that this point goes, and it's included. So I write that as negative 4, but I put a bracket around it because it's included. Then if I look up, the furthest up this graph ever goes is infinity. So negative 4 to infinity, and since infinity isn't something I can actually touch, we use a parenthesis there. Okay, let's do the next one. So in this one, we need to, given the following equation, solve for x in terms of a, b, and c. So basically, I need to get x by itself. So we can do this in one of two ways. You can first consider what is happening to x, and that's especially helpful if you have trouble with these. So I'm going to write out what happened to x. Well, x is being multiplied by a, and then we're subtracting 4b. So I need to do the opposite in the opposite order. So first I'm going to add 4b. And if I add 4b to one side, I have to be sure to add it to the other. And then we're left with ax. And then on the right side, since b is a like term with these two b's on top, I combine these. So 2b's plus 4b's gives me 6b's all together. And then lastly, we're multiplying by a, so now I need to do the opposite, which would be divide by a. So we have two options on the right-hand side here. We can do pretzel method, or we can just leave it as one big fraction. Since it's not a multiple choice question, I don't have to worry about it matching my choices. So I can leave it as 3c plus 6b divided by a. Alright, let's do the next one. For number 3, we have Tammy and Chelsea both solving and graphed the inequality 96x minus 25 is less than negative 409 on the board. Who arrived at the correct solution, and explain the mistakes made in the incorrect solution. So if I look at these, when you solve these, you should always kind of think, well, how would I solve it? So it might help to solve it off to the side, especially if it says to correct the student's work. So I'm just going to go through, since it doesn't say I have to correct the solution because one of them is correct, I'm just going to look at them. So 96 minus 25 is less than negative 409. I need to bring over the x's are on one side, so I need to move the 25 by adding it to both sides. That does give me negative 384, but that shows me the same in both steps. So my next step would be to divide by 96, which would give me an x and negative 4, but wait, this person flipped the inequality. That only happens when we divide by a negative. We didn't divide by a negative. Yes, we do have a negative over here, but we didn't divide by a negative. So Chelsea should not have flipped the inequality. So I start off by saying Tammy is correct because Chelsea flipped the inequality, though she did not divide by a negative. But if I look on, I also see that they had another difference. This one used a closed dot. This one used an open dot. Sure, this one's shaded to the right, but according to her solution, she should have. So that's not really a mistake, a new mistake. That's just with this mistake. So Tammy used an open circle, and I think that's correct because the inequality sign does not include an equal sign. So it's just less than, not less than or equal to. So I just wrote that up saying that Chelsea also used a closed dot instead of an open dot. Negative 4 is not included in the solution. Alright, number 4. Solve the inequality below and determine and state the largest possible integer value of x in the solution set. So first I just need to solve it. So in order to solve this, I need to start by distributing the negative 6 to both things inside the parentheses to get rid of the parentheses. When I do that, I get negative 6x minus 54 is greater than or equal to 3x plus 9. Then rover, bring the smaller x over. Since a negative is smaller than a positive, I'm going to add 6x to both sides. When I do that, I get negative 54 is greater than or equal to 9x plus 9. So then I need to subtract 9 from the right-hand side so that the x is by itself. And then in the next step, I'll get negative 63 is greater than or equal to 9x, but then in order to get x by itself, I need to divide by 9. And then I'll finally get negative 7 is greater than or equal to x. So this is my solution. I didn't need to flip the inequality because there was not any division by a negative. So now it says to state the largest possible integer value of x in the solution set. Well, to do this, I think that it helps to draw out a number line, even though it doesn't say that we have to graph it. And that's just because that'll show me what my solutions are. So in the middle, remember, we always put what our answer was, and then we put one lower and one higher. Well, one lower than negative 7 would be negative 8, and one higher would be negative 6. We're going to put a closed dot on negative 7 because it's included in my solution. So that means that I need a closed dot, and then I need to shade where it's true. Well, if I put the x value in place of the x, negative 8 is less than or equal to negative 7, so I'm going to shade towards negative 8 and beyond. So then this will help me to see, well, what is my smallest integer value? Well, since negative 7 is included, my smallest integer value is negative 7. If it was not included, then I would have to say that it was negative 8. So if I had an open circle on negative 7. So that number line helped me to determine that negative 7 is the smallest integer value of x in the solution set, and that's my answer. Okay, on to the back. Okay, at number 5 here, first thing that I see is I have fractions, and I want to get rid of those fractions. So I'm going to multiply all terms by 5. So remember that terms are separated with addition or subtraction, so that means that this entire piece over here is one term because there's no addition or subtraction between it. Between them, there's actually multiplication. And the same thing over here because the 2 is connected to this x minus 4 with multiplication, and the same thing over here. So I'm going to multiply those both by 5, and when I do that, my 5 over here will cancel with the 5 in the denominator, which is good because I don't have a fraction anymore, which is exactly what I wanted. So on the left side, I'm left with 3 parentheses 5x minus 10. Now on the right side, what do I do with this 5? It's being multiplied by this. Well, that means that I just need to multiply 5 times the 2 because that is the number of x minus 4s I have here. So 5 times 2 will then distribute into the next pieces. So just 5 times 2. Then I need to go ahead and distribute my numbers in front to get rid of parentheses. So when I do that, I get my 15x minus 30 equals 10x minus 40. Now I want to bring the smaller x over, so 10 is less than 15, so I'm going to subtract 10x to both sides, and then that gives me the 5x minus 30 equals negative 40, and now I need to get the constant over to the other side, so I'm going to add 30 to both sides, which gives me 5x equals negative 10, and then lastly, to get 5 or x by itself, I need to divide by 5 to both sides, which will then give me my final answer of x equals negative 2. And remember, we could check this by plugging in x, negative 2 in place of x, and then seeing if my answer is the same on both sides. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, question number 6 says that Kathy and Alexa work at a department store. Kathy is paid $428 per week plus 1% of her sales in dollars X, which can be represented by, and they gave me a function. Well, that's very nice. And Alexa is paid $208 per week plus 3.5% of her total sales in dollars X, which can be represented by A of X equals 208 plus 0.035X. Then we need to determine the value of X in dollars that will make their weekly pay the same. So out of that, all of that information, my most important pieces are that I want to find when they are the same, and remember that the same in math means that they are equal to one another. So same, and what needs to be the same? Well, the two functions. So all I need to do is take my two functions and set them equal to one another. So when I set them equal to each other, I then just need to go through and take the smaller x and move it over. So 0.01 is smaller, so I'm going to subtract 0.01 from both sides. And that's the x, so that it all moves to one side. Then I get this 428 equals 209 plus 0.025x. Then I need to get my 209 to the other side, so I'm going to subtract 209 from both sides, which will then give me 220 equals 0.025x. So then I need to divide both sides by the 0.025 to get x by itself. And that gives me x equals 8800, which, because it said in the question, determine the value of x in dollars, is telling me to write this as a dollar answer. So my final answer is $8,800, and that's it for that question. Okay, on to the final two questions. Johanna went shopping to buy supplies for a party she is throwing, and she decided to buy a cake for $48. So I know that that's something that she's going to spend. And she wants to buy ice cream by the gallon, and I know that it costs me $4.65 per gallon. At most, how many gallons, whole gallons of ice cream can she purchase if she only has $80? Well, if she only has $80, that means that she can either spend all of that money or she can spend less than that amount. So I'm going to start by writing out, I don't really need a let statement. You could write one if you want one, but I don't need one because there's only one unknown. The gallons of ice cream. So I know I'm spending $48 on the cake, plus I'm buying ice cream at $4.65, so 4.65 per gallon. Don't know how many gallons, so that's my X. But I need to have an inequality because I can spend only the $80. So $80, or I can spend less than that. So the amount that I spend, or Johanna spends, can be less than or equal to 80. Now we just need to solve this. So I need to get the 48 to the other side. The x's are already together on the left, so I'm going to subtract 48 from both sides. And this will give me 4.65x is less than or equal to 32. Then in order to get x by itself, I need to divide both sides by that 4.65. And when I do that, I end up with x is less than or equal to 6.88172043. Well, that doesn't seem right. That's okay. Remember that this is just a decimal answer, but because it's an inequality, yes, this answer wouldn't make sense in the context of the problem, but I need to pick one that does, because my answer is any x value that's less than or equal to 6.88172043. So if she can't spend more, we know that the x has to be less than this. The most that she can buy is 6 gallons. She doesn't have enough for the 7th. So my final answer is that Johanna can purchase at most 6 gallons of ice cream. So at most the 6 gallons. Okay, on to the last one. Simplify and express your answer using positive exponents only. So whenever we have this numerator is being cubed, so I need to expand this out and write it 3 times. So now I have 8x to the 6y squared written 3 times. So now I need to simplify that by multiplying, because remember we always clean up the top, clean up the bottom, divide at the end. So 8 times 8 times 8, that gives me 512. And then I have x to the 6, x to the 6, x to the 6th. 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18, so x to the 18th. And then the y's, 2 plus 2 more plus 2 more gives me y to the 6th altogether. And remember that that's all being divided by the 4x to the 8th y. So now I can divide, so 512 divided by 4 gives me 128. And it's not a fraction, so I don't have to bother writing it as a fraction. X to the 18th divided by x to the 8th, well 18 minus 8 of them would be x to the 10th. And then I have 6 y's on the top, 1 on the bottom. So again, I'm just going to subtract 6 minus 1 gives me y to the 5th. And since none of those answers when I subtracted my exponents came out negative, I don't even need to worry about moving any of them to the denominator, so this is my final answer. Okay, so that's it for this extra review video. Hopefully all of this has helped you prepare for your test. We'll see you tomorrow.